not a bad fella to take you to the job over, is it?
It's a very healthy position to be in.
Yeah.
Well, the VFA's decided to award a medal to the best VFA player in the series, and one of the great ruckmen of the 50s. He played at the age of 27. He played his first VFL game for South Melbourne and won the best and fairest for South, is Frank Johnson. And Frank Johnson had the pleasant news of learning that this medal would be named after him, and Peter G asked him his reaction to that.
Well, it was quite a shock, actually. Yeah, you often hear of these things happening to other people, but never to yourself. And I must admit, I was a bit tongue-tied when Athol Hodgetts rang me and told me, you know, what had happened. It's a great honour, and I thank the VFA for, you know, thinking my record was good enough to name a medal after me. Although you may have been a good footballer, you never, well, I personally anyhow, I never sort of gave that thought, you know, well, I'm a champion footballer, or whatever it may be. I just went out and played my game, enjoyed my football, and well, endeavoured to achieve the best that I could in what I was doing.
Well, you achieved quite a lot. What sort of footballer were you?
My game was based on my ability to jump and mark, and that's luckily nobody seemed to be able to counteract me to a great deal.
Frank, you won the Liston in 1952. Was that the best football you played in your career? I
always felt that my best single year of football was played in the first year I went to Warrnambool, and I played in the Hampden League. I don't know why that was. Perhaps it was a more relaxed, you know, type of football. If circumstances had have favoured me in those days, I possibly would have been playing football with South 4 years earlier than what I did. And I actually made an application for a clearance to go to South Melbourne, which was knocked back. That was, well, if I played in 1960, that would be 1956, 57, to start the 57 season. And Port Melbourne at that stage appointed me coach of the side, so which I did coach the side for 2 years. And then they released me to go to Warrnambool, and it was only after 2 years at Warrnambool and then coming back for private reasons that I got the opportunity to go back to South. And there were still some wrangles involved, clearance-wise, but and it was virtually a last-minute decision that allowed me to play league football.
When you came back from Warrnambool, in your own mind, I think you'd hung up your boots, and it was only a chance meeting with Ronnie Clegg that got you to play league football for South Melbourne. Were there a few people laughing behind their hands that you were coming back at the age of 27 to play league football for the first time?
Yes, yeah, there were a few people in particular who you know, not only thought it, but you know, came out and said publicly that they didn't think I could make the grade at that age, especially after being, you know, in the country for a couple of seasons. But you know, happily I was able to prove them wrong and not only play 1 year, but play 5.
Have you seen any of those people since, or did they eat their words publicly?
Well, yes, I must admit, Lou Richards was one of those people who made a statement that he thought that you know, at 27 you couldn't break into league football at that age. But to his credit, he gave me the opportunity to make him eat his words on television, so you know, he was a big enough man to be able to do that.
He's done it a few times since. I suppose those little blokes have got it in for you big fellas, haven't you? Do you think ruckmen make rovers or vice versa?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, actually. I mean, a ruckman can't get kicks for a rover around the ground. I mean, he's got to have the ability to be able to do that himself. But if you get two people that work well together and get a good understanding together, I think that, yeah, I think a ruckman can make the game a lot easier for a rover, without doubt.
What about representing the VFA, Frank? Are there any particular carnivals that are vivid in your mind?
Yeah, I always remember 1953 when we played a carnival in Adelaide, and we had players like Eric Guide. In that particular year, they took 4 players from Port. That was the, as I said, our first ruck combination, which was Reg Murray, Bernie Miller and myself, and Mopsy Fraser was coaching us that year. And we had a top side, a really great side, and we'd won the first game comfortably, and our second game was against the VFL, and we were well into the last quarter when we had we had the game won, and anyhow Mopsy Fraser went off with a crook shoulder, and that was the turning point of the game, and the VFL got up and managed to sort of pip us on the post at the finish. And of course it was such a big effort on our players' parts that we suffered a fair few injuries from that, and then when we played Western Australia and South Australia from that point on, we were defeated in those games too. But if we could have won that game, it could have been a different story.
Yeah.
That was a great game.
Well, I hope down in Tasmania the VFA don't have such bad luck and can come home with the NFL Shield, and I hope that the first winner of the Frank Johnson Medal is deserving. It'll be a great thrill for you, no doubt, when you hand that over.
Well, it will be. It will be a great pleasure for me to be able to hand that medal over to the first winner for this year.
Frank Johnson talking to Peter G, and incidentally Frank's son, Frank Jr., played in the Port Melbourne Premier side of 1980. But Len, what was it like playing against Frank Sr. back in the 50s?
Yeah, it was pretty tough as an under 8-year-old, but I do remember Frank, not necessarily, well, I remember that history where he said it was a bit of a clearance wrangle, because those things were unknown in those days, and it was sort of someone going backwards and forwards as Frank did. But he was a very solid and dual player, and another Johnson, Bob Johnson, Tassie Johnson, that played for Melbourne, was similar sort of, always reliable, always strong at the ball and good mark, and as he said, had a big leap, and was a good solid player. They were the days I just realised how great Skilton was when I was a little kid, and Skilton, and that's what he said to Hopper Rover.
Did you want to ask Len the same question, Phil?
Yeah, you sort of stole my thunder in there, because I obviously wasn't born at that stage when he was at his top. But I did notice the question that was asked of Frank on the question of whether ruckmen make rovers, and he was very diplomatic and more or less said it was a sort of a joint venture to become great players. What do you think, Len, of ruckmen making rovers?
I think if I went to a game and watched a game and saw a ruckman-rover combination, I'd give the ruckman best in the ground. But if a rover went and watched it, if Skilton was there, he'd give the rover the best in the ground. I think they're combinations. I believe that there's been some great ruck-rover combinations. Nichols, Gallagher, Farmer, Goggin. I believe I was very lucky. I had a player called Wayne Richardson who was a champion at Collingwood for many years, and I think we were ruck-rover combination for about 11 or 12 years in a row. And oddly enough, we all talk as coaches. We now talk about players talking together, and you've got to communicate and all those sorts of things. Wayne and I never spoke.
Right.
Never spoke, other than away from the ball. If the ball was in the forward line and we're in the centre, we would talk back there. But when we went to a ball up boundary throw, we never spoke. We just had, it was sort of just done by the eyes.
Well,
we knew where we were going to be, and he never did anything. Good rover never gets into a position where the ruckmans can't hit it. Like there's so many people today call for the ball and they wonder why they've got an open spot. They got it open because the ruckman can't hit the thing there anyway. If he was if he had 9 arms, he'd have trouble. But I think that's when things work well, when they make each other. I don't believe a ruckman makes a great rover. Except I did have one thing in a carnival too in 1972. Skilton was playing, and we went out there, and I was sort of, I had Skilton as a rover. I thought this was fantastic. And half time we came in, I could not hit the ball to him. I could not get him hit. I was going silly trying to hit the ball to Skilton. He came in at half time and he pulled me aside and he said, "Now listen, son, you better just use someone else. I think maybe Bartley and Stewart as the rover, because he said, I've never roved to a winning ruckman, so I don't know what to do." Which was interesting.
Well, I'm going to rove in here amongst the pack and steal the limelight again. Of course, carnivals are a great time for reminiscing. Memories flood back, history of the game, all that sort of thing. People like to sit around and talk.